Hi, everyone. Okay, that's easier. Hi, everyone. Good morning. It's so nice to see so many familiar faces today after so long. I'm Curator of Education, Anna Smith, and today it's my pleasure to introduce artist Mel Chin. Aiming to bring awareness to social and environmental issues, Mel Chin creates conceptual art that defies categories and labels. Chin's investigative and expressive art includes collage, installations, animation, videos, and sculptures that engage in cross-collaboration. He created Revival Field in 1991, pioneering the use of plants to remove toxic heavy metals from the soil. From 1995 to 98, he formed the collective The Gala Committee that produced In the Name of the Place, a public art project conducted on American primetime television. His Fundred project, launched in 2008, invests in actions to end childhood lead poisoning through mass public engagement. Chin also produces films, such as 9/11, 9/11 in 2007, which won the Pedro Sienna Award for Best Animation, and L'Arctique et Paris in 2015, which delivered the warnings of a Greenlandic subsistence hunter to an international audience for COP21. In the summer of 2018, he filled New York's Times Square with a massive sculpture called Wake on the ground and an augmented reality project called Unmoored in the air, creating an experiential portal into a past maritime industry and a future of rising waters. All over the place, a 40-year survey exhibition at the Queen's Museum was named by Hyperallergic as the best NYC exhibition of 2018. Chin is the recipient of many awards, grants, and honorary degrees, including a MacArthur Fellowship in 2019 and his election to the American Academy of Arts and Letters in 2021. I encourage you all, if you haven't already, to go see Mel Chin's exhibition Inescapable Histories, which will be on view at the gallery at UT Arlington through March 30th. Please join me now in giving a warm welcome to Mel Chin.
Well, I certainly hope I can speak with equivalent clarity as the education director. I'm glad we have the seats assigned, hecklers up front. And so what we're going to do today, I think that, of course, I have the show at UT Arlington, a fabulous curator here, friend, artist, Benita Huerta. Oh, show so some samples of that, but I thought I'd try something different. I just might introduce how things become sculpture, film, whatever. You'll see, where am I now? So we're going to do this, and we have a special treat. Since it's Saturday and you came out, we have a film matinee. So you know, I'll take full advantage of this initiative to belabor your mind with my ramblings. Okay, since we're, this is, to be correct, the Sculpture Center, right? Okay, so we better begin with a painting. So here's the painting, and it's called The Persistent Emanation of Denial and Disease, Waking the Deepening and Enduring Hue of Resistance. Autocorrect. Now, what causes a long title like this and an artwork like this? So back in October in 2020, there was a wide awake movement that was sweeping the country. And have y'all heard of the wide awake movement? Okay, all right. And as fellow artists participated, created this, Hank Willis Thomas. I mean, there's amazing people that participated. It started actually back in 1860 with young men like this that wore these tarps and took these lamps, and they were anti-slavery kids. They were activists that took to the streets, and they had these beautiful emblems of these eyes that are wide awoke to what was going on. And they spread to the Northeast and created big demonstrations that never made it to Texas. Okay? So I did a drawing on that day because I remember, though they didn't make it to Texas, the word of their presence did. The information did. And you notice how I replaced the pupils with what looks like heavenly bodies, right? Well, they're from Galileo's description in the 1600s of the sun and the moon. And I was looking at that date, which was very important, around 1600s. 1623, I think, was this publication, which indicated, it kind of told people a new story, that, hey, maybe we don't, the sun may not revolve around us. It might be a whole nother thing here. Of course, there is a rapid denial of science. And he was even locked up in house arrest during that time. So I took those images and I started painting them. I painted them in this almost kind of eaten flesh, this very disastrous body, heavenly body, with maybe even gangrene forming on the edges. What's up with that, right? And then the other one was painted with softer tones of browns, of like melanin-coated skin, and was emanating and resisting the emanation and reflecting a very different message. So I put them up high above there. Because what I'm addressing maybe was the 1619 was the entrance of African slaves into America. And that's what I'm talking about. The 1619, 1600s, there was a denial of science and a denial of essential humanity with this introduction. And what was important about it in Texas and with the Wide Awakes movement, when they heard about it, it caused what they called the Texas Troubles. And it happened outside of Dallas. And maybe some places in downtown Dallas were burned as well. And it precipitated in the lynching of 30, maybe 100. We don't know how many black people during that time. So we live in a time where there's still denial of science and basic humanity. So I'm saying, when will it end, right? So anyway. So I did not make this. I mean, this is always an opportunity to be amongst people you don't know, to be transparent. I did not make it, but I'm awake to powerful people and sculptors and artists in this world, and certainly Louise Bourgeois is one of them. But I'm a little, maybe I'm a little more shy, and I met her. She's so furious that, hold up, and I was in awe. But so I made a smaller one and hid it in places where it could fit. And let's talk about this piece. It's called The Cabinet of Craving. This is not, I'm going to go through again how things come into being, right? So here we go. So look at this thing and you can see it and you say, oh man, look, Chin's a Chinese dude. So I think it may have a relationship to something Chinese, though I'm Texan, which really changes the whole equation. But if you look at the face, it's not. It's based on an English bulldog, the furniture. And it's not the spiders of Louise Bourgeois, but her vitrines that were inspiring to me. So we'll go a little deeper. So now you see the similarities? So let's look at this piece. One thing I cannot stand in furniture is Queen Anne's feet. I think they're awkward and they're just not right. Okay, we have some collectors here. And But what it was all made to concentrate on a silver platter and a teapot from the 1843, the last years of the Opium Wars. This is a piece that had to be. It's about the monstrosity of addiction. You know, in my family, my mother's father died of opium addiction, and we were never allowed to even speak of it. So this shame was so restrictive, I respected that until she passed. And then this piece had to come forward. Because it is about the monstrous levels of addiction that can occur within any family. And so this is another thought about things. And then rather than representing the opium and the war and all this, I depicted the two items that were in contention. It was English porcelain, it was Chinese porcelain and tea, and the need for that in the Western world, and the need for silver on the Chinese side that created this illegal trade of opium into China and addicted the whole country, basically, and brought ruin and eventually the impact on my own family. So sometimes a work of art is made to comment on this inescapable history that the name of the show that is at UT Arlington. Okay. Now look, I didn't make this film either, but I was so excited. I think I was maybe 13 or 12, and I heard there's a film with nudity in it. And I was going to play at the drive-in, so I was so excited when it finally showed up. Did you know about this film? Okay, because it featured, among all people, Mr. Klein. And Mr. Klein, and it had the film did have nudity, and it did have him creating the incredible symphony in blue, whatever it was, right? But I have to tell you, growing up after seeing it, I didn't remember any of that. I didn't remember anything about Klein. This is what I recalled. I recalled the cargo cult. The cargo cult was near the last phase, and it was exploitative, of course, and all these things, but it was profound, had a profound impact on me, not making fun of these people, but that they would make a full plane out of bamboo and present it. And the film, you can see it, if you want, and you can catch this part, but this is what inspired me. Someone making something, making a sculpture out of some material and representing something that was obvious, with such belief, that conviction to make something with such integrity, and belief. The idea of the Vanuatu people were making things. In truth, they were. It's here in the Pacific. They make these things in runways. When they saw the American planes flying in to the islands in World War II. And the cargo cult started when they started making these effigies. But they were not interested in the Americans' cargo and things. They were saying that eventually their plane would come in. Their plane would come in with goods, loaded with goods. And these goods would then be taken and given to each other. Because their culture, this island culture, was dependent on the act of human generosity. What do you give and what are you willing to give? Everything. So their belief was predicated on a code of conduct that represented a spiritual and emotional survival within their culture. And that's what I learned later, what the cargo cult represented. And it still exists to this day. So what would I make? Now this is something else that was delivered eventually. This is called a daisy cutter. And so I made, let's say, the handle of it with great conviction. And then I created a full-scale one in bamboo. The daisy cutter is a weapon that was created to clear jungle in Vietnam. And it would come down and blast with such horror. It would kill the jungle for 3 football fields wide and burn at intensity of unimaginable intensity. It's probably the closest you could get to a non-thermonuclear weapon. And they used them a lot in Vietnam. And I think it also added to the 2.5 million dead and packed the land so hard that there's still areas of Vietnam, Cambodia that are non-arable. It's too dense, too hard. So I decided to make my version to exact scale of this out of bamboo in honor of the cargo cult. Because what I'm talking about is this relationship. There's Mr. Socrates, who was questioning democracy and was poisoned with hemlock, right, for his corruption of the youth. And that's what the flower is of the bamboo of this. Rather than a parachute, it's coming down with this corruptive kind of value that they approximated with someone who would dare question an idea of democracy. So the reason for our strange flower of democracy is looking at these kind of documents, like our Constitution, and see, before we dropped them again after Vietnam, we saved a few and started dropping them in Iraq and Afghanistan. And it changed the designation from desert weapon, jungle weapon, right, clearing jungle, to APERS, which means anti-personnel bomb, for the terror and the impact and the killing that it could accomplish. And before they would drop this leaflet that essentially says that: flee and live or stay and die. So I'm saying this, as we say we promote democracy right now, which is a very, very fragile state, remember what we drop on other people, and remember what we are about as Americans. I'm just talking about me, maybe as an American, by the way. And I think all these reflections are personal, an observation of criticality that I think is essential to do what we do as an artist, for me to do as an artist. So this juxtaposition also, and this knowledge causes this cargo cult like being object to be formed. That's why it's formed. Okay? Y'all can stop me at any time, Okay. This is this fentanyl. This is the outcome of, wasn't it some art people, the Sacklers? Oh my goodness. I better look up what Mr. Nasher did. No, don't y'all laugh. Anna's here, No, I did look it up. He was not trading opioids and marketing them. However, so you look at this, and I was looking at the impact of opioids that led to fentanyl distribution and its discontent in America. So I said, what do you do with that? So I started thinking about the heartbeat of a life, the percussion of life, and its impact on society. So I started doing sketches of drum sets. I don't play drums, but I learned that any drummers here? A couple of y'all? Yeah, all of you, I guess. A drum set, when it's all put together, is called a trap set. That's the right name. So this is the outcome of that. This is right. I guess we push a button. Oh, it moves. It's a mobile. I had to bring sculpture back in, what I'm saying? That's cool. So this is the molecule fentanyl reinterpreted. And instead of goat skin and calf hide, I use sheepskin to talk about the same kind of parchment that was used in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and legal documentation. Okay, more drums, a couple of more drums. Don't worry about it. I'm beating my own story here. So here's one, and so again, the influence of things in the world, and you cannot escape. I know you're Dallas, I'm sorry, but it's from Houston. We're talking about DJ Screw, right? Slab culture, right? Slow, low, and banging. I mean, If you have your Radilac, I know you want to put some on there, and they're amazing. They're amazing. I think these are extensions of creativity that is profound, you know? It's original culture that comes out, it's sculpture that comes out of the spaces of imagination, of pressing boundaries of law. So my drum roller comes out like that, you know? So that's what I'm talking about. So open your ears to sound, music, and culture, and you're inspired, you see? So, you know, I was less sober when I was young. And I gave this talk at the New School of Social Research, if y'all know that, in New York. It was my first New York lecture. You know, it's a school full of commies, you know. So, and I feel pretty good with you guys because I was extremely nervous because it was a graduate school of psychology and philosophy. I knew the School of Philosophy I didn't know what I was talking about. And I was so deathly afraid that the School of Psychology would detect my early childhood trauma. So I am like freaky deaky. And so I make something. I get a piece of 2x4 and I take a book. And I carve its head into that shape and dip it in wax and sharpen it up. I wrap it in newspaper, and I get a 6-pack of Budweiser, and I go to the lecture. And it was a bunch of men with pipes, young men and old men's. And it's like this, so I'm sitting there, and I start drinking. I have an Asian affliction. I turn red. I get the headaches. I think it's the inability to process who's the doctor here? I think it's a Delahide. And yeah, it's a dealio. So here I'm turning red by the third beer, and I think the young man, the grad student, invited me to School of Psychology, said, "Mr. Chin, I think it's time to talk." So I jump up, I rip the paper off. I said, "This is an axe." And he says, "What the fuck are you going to do?" And I turn around, I slam the axe into the blackboard, and it cracks open. And my notes come out. And I pick it up, and it says, "In Chinese philosophy, you begin with an axe." Well, it was a totally successful lecture because, first of all, they were so scared they didn't, and I was so drunk when someone wanted to ask about Plato's cave and all that. I said, "I don't want to talk about that crap, man, those shadows." They said, "Okay, that's cool, man. Just stay back." But there's always a deeper story. It was... Isn't it Rilke? No, let's see. Is it Rilke? No, it's Kafka. The book is an axe for the frozen sea within us. It's beautiful. It's powerful. And those are the things that drive me too, the poetic dimension of this. And also the lines from Homer that was isolated by the great Elaine Scarry in her book, The Body and Pain, where she talks about this revolution in language and description, where she says, I say it's that line that the arrow that strikes Achilles' heel is freighted with dark pain. It's an incredible construction to think about this object loaded with the potentiality of that. And that is totally inspiring to make things from. I could go on about her dissertation there in literature and philosophy about how the world itself can be divided between two components, pain and imagination. pain in its final reality is actually war and torture. And it is the unmaking of the world. It unmakes it. Because war will just kill you and destroy your capacities for continuum. And torture removes that capacity for the construction of human speech. And so therefore, it truly unmakes the world. And it is essential for this other element. Like if you close your eyes and just forgot about me, then something would float into your mind. And that object is essential for the verb to be partnered with. And that is the remaking of the world. So I do believe in my understanding of making objects and ideas and thoughts, that it is the job description to think of art as a catalytic structure, no matter what it is, whether it's sculpture, painting, or film, or as a means to establish, if not even my own language, a place for maybe languages that have not yet been formed to arrive, to survive. So that's how I think about it. This piece is called Inescapable Histories, and it was 1988. It's a sling woven in a manner as how David would have put it together when he put that rock in there and it confronted the Palestinian giant Goliath. Now it's weird when I was doing this piece, it's not weird, but how time rolls around, is that then it's the Palestinian youth with a rock, defending himself or throwing a rock at an Israeli defense force with these weapons in their hands. So a gigantic force against this thing. So this is just an observation. I want to add, we've been talking about two-dimensional, well, there's also fourth-dimensional kind of reality, time. And this piece with this olive stake in it and this artifact actually it's a rock from Hebron that's been carved with the contours of the state of Israel, the current boundaries, and the West Bank that is trapped within it, scrapes along, destroys the wall behind it, and is scraping at this slow pace and trapped in this kind of a intractable kind of situation. Sometimes art is made to describe the world you live in, and it's part of the world we live in. The other inescapable history is this guy, Benito. And we actually the makeup session last night lasted 24 hours. It's a miracle what the drama department at the University of Texas Arlington do. Yeah. And then another 12 hours of Photoshop this morning, and boomba. Yes, once we were young, and it is this unbreakable bond between friends. And that's why I really tried hard to bring the best game for our continuing conversation here at the University of Texas Arlington. So I hope y'all go and catch a couple of things there, because some of the things I'll continue with works that are in the exhibition. So my work is also consumed, no pun intended, with research. And these are junk food spices that were isolated from packages of food, I tried every, piece of food I could find that was packaged and had BHD oil in it. I did it because y'all cool with these stories? I mean, I'll tell you the story. Okay, all right. Because sometimes, in an art hysterical kind of moment, people might want, no, excuse me, sir, I want the accession number and what you were doing at that time. I said, okay, cool. But this is a true story. Okay. So it was in New York in the 90s, and I was called about participating in a flag show. And you may have guessed, I pride myself in I'm an object maker, but I like to say I'm a conceptual artist, and that's arguable too. But the point is I was kind of like high on my horse, so to speak. And so when they called me, I said, oh, well, there's been about 6 flag shows, and so how original is that? Forget about it. Then all of a sudden I had an idea, and I ran to the gallery. So I ran to the gallery, and I came up and I said, hey, I love your show and I love your concept and I want to be in it, and you're really eating humble pie in your mind. And then the gallerista says, oh no, she said, oh no, the show's all been curated and we have the poster and you see all your friends on it. There's no more room in the gallery, so goodbye. Back then and still now, maybe, I don't know, galleries can be kind of curt, But then I looked at the bottom of the poster and it said, among others. And I said, wait a minute, it's me. I was so excited. A weirdo. I was excited. And then I said, oh, no more room in the gallery? Coolio. Just give me a plug in the hallway. It's cool. Okay? So with all this research, I brought in this vending machine. I plugged in the wall, and this is at UT. It's been reprised for this special occasion, right? And it was operational, and it was $1 a piece at that time. These at the exhibition will not be for sale. The machine's out of order. I undid it. I broke the machine. These are the last remnants, but they were all cooked in individual junk food spices like German chocolate, ramen oriental, Mexican taco cheese, right? And then put in their packages. So what was I talking about in this flag? First I desecrated the flag, I packaged it. Am I talking about the non-nutritional value of junk food, patriotism, whatever? Yeah, maybe. But I think I spend a lot of time with these things, and I start thinking about our culture. At the time in the 90s, and even now, we're divided. But I felt like we're not fragmented as a culture. I think we're compartmentalized as a culture, relegated to very specific kind of conditions that are marketed and mediated in very particular ways. And that's what the story is, see? So anyway, that's at the camp. And then you have this piece. By the way, I'm part of the family of the Nasher. One of these is in the collection in Duke University. So, that's all. I just want to let you know. I feel like I'm in family. That's why I'm so casual, right? Stop me if it's really getting on your nerves, by the way. I can get very formal. But what is about this piece? So what this piece is about is actually the AK-47 is the international symbol of resistance to the West. And that's why Osama bin Laden would pose with it every video picture. There's also at one time in the flag of Burkina, or the crest of Burkina Faso. It has its huge symbolic value in the world. And the other part is because that cross is not Celtic. It's has this shape. It's the Maltese or also the Knights of Templar cross. So by combining these two, creating this condition where if you were to pull the trigger, you would just destroy the piece, right? Well, what this piece is about. Maybe these symbolic beliefs are in this eternal kind of unjust struggle. And so, again, making an object to convey that reality, all right? Always a pop quiz, and you already know it. I'm strapped in your block with my Glock, ready to let loose on any imitator that I spot. You know the lines, you've heard it 1,000 times, I know, right? So, come on, come on. Oh, it's a trick question. I knew you would. You would have said Snoop Dogg, right? Pump, 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 and yeah, you would have been almost right. It's a trick question because it was Little Hershey Locke, who really did it. He's a 16-year-old who did that line. Anyway, where am I? Okay, so now that we've got that out, but it's a Glock 9mm. It's the Glock 9mm that this is done. It was in Black Mail, the exhibition Black Mail, '94, curated by Thelma Golden. And it is a Glock 9mm that I I took and cored out every aspect of its internal workings and retrofitted it. And in the exhibition, you have this diagram with all the components. It's a medical kit. It's a gun trauma kit. It has a 100 FM transmitter. It has a little saline bag. It has oxycodone hydrochloride for your pain. It has a auto-injector of epinephrine when your blood pressure is dropping. It has an ACE bandage. It has a 14-gauge angiocatheter when you're for tension pneumothorax, right? So and you jab it right here to save someone's life or your own. So what I'm discussing in this, I guess, is that the aura of gun is so pervasive in our culture. Where am I? Oh, yeah, okay. I guess it's pretty pervasive here too, right? Okay, and it's solid. And the aura, it's real. It's real. Its aura is so real and so strong that there's very little I could do to transform and create art out of that. So I chose to put the contents of this transformation internally as a covert kind of presence. Because sometimes in your own being, in your own life, your changes that you must make must be covert. Because the culture around you or your friends or your social society around you will not allow it, or you will be ostracized or whatever. So this is an attempt to a call for bravery of oneself, for the possibility of this transformation to save your own life, perhaps. You see? So I don't want to get too preachy. It is Saturday, though. And this work is in the show. I'm glad to bring it. It's called Safe. And Safe is about 12 feet high, and it's comprised of the wood, the frame, and all these nails, about 500, 600 pounds of nails. Where does it come from? What gave its reason for being? It starts with my investigations. After reading many years ago in high school, The Heart of Darkness, I remember, Mr. Kurtz and the idea of the horror. Mr. Conrad, when he wrote, Joseph Conrad wrote the book, at times you could read it as a fiction, but actually what he was describing was reality. He was talking about the Congo during the period of King Leopold II. And this is I guess this is a bond, or what do you call this? A dividend for the Belgian Congo. And what happened was, and y'all know the history of the Belgian Congo? Yeah. Okay. You might want to check out what inspired me, or, that's the wrong word. It was not inspired. I was compelled to create this piece. And it was from the book, Leopold's Ghost. Leopold's Ghost chronicles the complete takeover of the Belgian Congo. And the consequences was the first contemporary genocide of that time in the 1900s was 10, maybe 20 million Africans dead in the wake of this for the use of what made cars and things happen is for rubber. And all the atrocities like hand cutting and all this that we hear of now, it started during this time of colonial subjugation. So, and I started, what compelled me, not only the book, but also there's a New York Times article about the troubles in Africa, and it was indicated that the problems were most likely tribal. And I totally rejected that because I said, no, it is 100 years plus of horror. And so you have to take that into account to the story. So the research begins, and I start using this as elements to create a painting, to use the crests and things to understand elements I could use, get to know what his whole history is, and then create this painting that's done not so well. It's like a trophy frame with a landscape behind the Congo and that note behind it, and to create it in Belgian linen and to put it full scale, and then do the details of the frame. Like you have that, It's based on the rubber tree plant. You have this hippopotamus animal that's part of it. You have the hippo hide whip that's part of it, and you start understanding all the components that is there. And if you look closely, I guess it's kind of a dark slide. The nails never touch the painting. I understand the Coney figurines are created not to be like some magic thing as much as my understanding, but to have a connection with a member of your community. You drive that nail to say, okay, we have a deal, we have a relationship. And in this sad work, I'm saying that no matter how many nails the Congo people could have driven, it would be nothing could stop what was coming from behind. And so these observations of history are based on, I consider these pieces like lamentations. You know, there's nothing I could do about it, but as an artist to convey history in a way compelling enough to create the question that is so essential, I think, according to Mr. Baldwin, James Baldwin, that the purpose of art, right, is to create the question that is, because it's buried within all the answers. It's buried within all the histories I didn't even know about until I truly read the book, right? And we live in a contemporary time. Then this is the contemporary time. Here's another flag. It's in the exhibition. We just got it sewn up. It's there, and it's in the. It was also shown in the streets of New York, kind of just as a premise, like a slogan. Just, you know, where are we now? Right? And I think that it's time also, I believe in creating honest kind of conveyance of how we are as a people, right? And so this thing was shown with great effort to convey that message. So yeah, where we are, we're cray-cray, right? My mind's exploded every time, you know? This is Mr. Faulkner. He even is like, oh, fuck. You know, I think this is Mr. who wrote F. Scott Fitzgerald, and he's like, oh gosh, okay. And this is a collage. This is a collage. The revelers will have to pay. And where did this come? Where did this come out? You know, and well, it started. They all came from the Universal Standard Encyclopedia, and I found one copy in my parents' drawer after they died. I found this one book, and I started to cut it up and create, because I felt like, you know, in the wake of death and this loss and grieving, that at least something can live, and that's where art can be this healing kind of element. And then when you start you start cutting, you start realizing. You know, remember the book acts? Well, you know, going to be accused of destroying books. I made sure I took all the images out and kept every scrap, you know. And there's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of them. You know, you have combinations and concoctions. You have, you know, architectural kind of observation. You have familial ties that are being explored. And you have reality. You know, this is an Afghan family. They were never empty threats. And this is that obscure organism of desires. You know what this is? This is like these are ocean, like sponges forms. And those are like terrestrial photosynthetic plant and roots, right? Mycelia on that side. And if you look, the segmented body is made of men with not too much hair like me. On this side, these are all wigs, things that see sun and things that don't see sun, right? So they're just sniffing each other out. Men do that. So these are only a few of 524 collages called the Funk and Wag from A to Z. It's a Funk and Wagnalls Standard Encyclopedia, and it's been redone. And it is also in Arlington at the exhibition. Well, check it out. And it's intended to be away. It was a time where, I've been making all these dark commentaries, but there's times that you also have to heal, and you also have a means to express your psychology, your point of view, your humor, your critique of society in a very private way. And make it in a way where it will live in the face of all the things that are dying and being destroyed around us. Looking at those old books, I was realizing that those images were limited in time, and that's why those books are going to the trash. They're going away because the captions that accompanied them were no longer adequate to describe an encyclopedic understanding. But I felt art could be this liberating form and create another poetic dimension. Each one is named and labeled to add the poetic exploration, okay? So, all right. How are we doing? Okay, cool. Cool, okay, then, and it's cool then. Okay, in the snow, that's good. This is way back when. This is maybe about 2008. I found the shovel. I found the advance of the broken arm. Y'all know that. See, I told you we get back to sculpture and art history. And, but I just kept it around. Until recently, just before COVID, I discovered this person. You know who this is? Baroness Elsa von Freytag-Loringhoven. Okay? And she did this piece that was attributed to Morton Schomburg because he took the picture for 70 years. They thought it was his piece, but it was her piece. So, and we have the urinal, the fountain, which now people, certain scholars like Amelia Jones, Irene Gamble, MIT, the great book that came out of the Baroness, say no, it's most likely she gave the urinal. And it's interesting because she dies in Paris in 27 of illuminating gas. She does a painting with the urinal as a waterfall. And then we have the last piece of Duchamp, Étant donné, given the waterfall and the illuminating gas. It makes me think again, what was he given? He was given a possibility maybe by someone who was actually well known to the Madame Duchamp. She was a model, they're mostly a model, and they say in the books, but that's about it. But she also did this kind of weird film that's been lost called The Baroness Shaves Her Pubic Hair, which, she was a wild thing, okay? And in fact, many believe the ones that are contemporaries attribute her to be the embodiment of Dada. And she was unbridled. And to me, I was so relieved to learn of her that I said, as a conceptual artist, I like to say, okay, it gets boring after a while. You say, well, who's your influences, I said, okay. All right, one more time. Marcel Duchamp, okay. This French dude that never knew me, And then now I'm excited. Yes, Marcel Duchamp and the Baroness Elsa von Freytag-Loringhoven, because there was a spirit of the artist that I think she embodied. By the way, it is documented. She did create the first found object as a piece of plumbing, again, called the Eternal Ring. So it is documented. She is within the books. So, so there, and I went to the Philadelphia Museum. I go up, I do the Rocky thing. I go up, and I meet with the curators and the conservation, and I come back because they won't let me take a picture, the exact plans for God, because I got to make God for myself, right? And so with that, how y'all doing for time? We're going to have a movie break. Y'all want to see it's matinee movie time. It's a 15-minute film. Let's watch a film, okay? They came out. No, and we'll be back in a minute. Don't clap. Do not. No. Stop that. You were paid to come heckle. All right. So let's look at a film, guys, okay?
I've come to see God.
God. 1917. Accession number 1950-134182 from the Aaronsburg collection, wood miter box, cast iron plumbing trap. Oh, that's not quite right. Lead. Brass, it's been patinaed. Originally attributed to Morton Schaumburg, now co-attributed to Baroness Elsa von Freitag-Loringhoven.
Who? Well, I thought it was Schomburg.
Loringhoven. New scholarship suggests it was her work. She named the piece. He assisted her. And he took the photograph that's in the collection at the Met.
Can't believe I haven't heard of her.
Well, she was a model for Man Ray and Duchamp. She made things like this. In my opinion, she was the embodiment of Dada. We know she died in Paris in the late 1920s.
Of what?
Asphyxiation. Illuminating gas.
Do you mind if I take a closer look?
Sure, Leo. Call me when you're done.
Damn it, where is it? Anne? Bring me the file on the Baroness.
Call with Hong Kong.
Thank you.
Miss Liu, it's so nice to see you. Hope things aren't too stressful for you out there.
No, protesters haven't made it up to the peak. Mr. Funberg, Mr. Chin truly appreciate all your effort in assembling some remarkable pieces for him to review. However, he wants something that nobody else has. He wishes to thank you,
Miss
but...
Liu, please convey to Mr. Chin that he does not need to go to anyone else. I deliver the rarest and most exclusive work in the art world, only for him. Please ask Mr. Chin to be patient.
Very well. We must go over some other details.
Miss Liu, I'm sorry, can we reschedule?
But
Please give Mr. Chin my regards and be safe out there.
And bring me my magnifying glass. This is ridiculous. Scan it into the computer. High resolution. That's not what I want to see.
There's a woman.
Am I looking for a date?
Just...
You just need to do what I say. Go to the right. Back. Zoom in on that shovel. There, blow it up. There. In advance of the broken arm. 1917. Marcel Duchamp. Once I was lost, now you have been found. Bring me the Schwartz book. Bill, Leo, whatever happened to this shovel? In advance of the broken arm, trebuchet and the bicycle wheel, the originals, were they ever found? What's the relationship between the Baroness and Duchamp? Huh. No, nothing. Just curious. Thanks, Bill. Anne, find everyone with the last name Grove in Sparta, Kentucky. I love you, Andy.
Come on, Larry, not that much. Hey, sorry I didn't make it to Venice. What am I working on? Really can't say. What I can tell you is, it is bigger than the bunny. We'll talk later. I got Jakob on the other line.
Tell me you have something for me.
Jakob, you know I deliver the rarest and most exclusive work in the art world, only for you. I'm onto something big here. It'll be at the auction.
Reputation will be determined by delivering what I want. Don't fool around with me.
And Grove letters went out, correct?
Yes.
And? Still nothing?
Remember, I told you. One came in yesterday. It's on your desk.
Good. Well, that confirms they have it.
Miss Grove, I'm Leo Feinberg. I was traveling through the South with Bruno here and thought I'd just stop by. Did you get the correspondence from my office?
I did. Would you like to come in? Just had no idea you'd take pleasure in the confusion of boundaries. It's so hot. You take your coat. You know, I thought you were fooling with us. Talking about a shovel that's broken, that isn't broken. It didn't make any sense.
The office can be overly descriptive. Did you get the offer?
You know, these things on a farm can be obstructive clutter. Worn, broken tools, to be spurned.
Now that I'm here, I can offer you more than $50.
Can I get you a glass of lemonade?
$100.
I cannot do homage to the business side. What I mean is, we have to decline. Amelia. Excuse me. Mr. Feinberg,
My grandmother's ailing. She has that useless appendix of the heart. Truth is, we don't have that shovel anymore. I'm sorry you came so far for this. If you don't care to, you can see your own way out. I've got to prepare her for the doctor tomorrow. Just so many body, sweat, and chores.
I'm sorry that your grandmother's sick. Is there a doctor close by?
No, we'll be gone all day. I'm sorry my letter wasn't more clear.
Not all of us are gifted in communication.
I hate it for you that you traveled so far.
It's alright, we were just passing. God damn it, she's lying to me. We both saw it. I don't know what's going on. We are coming back for the goddamn shovel. Break it down. Agantar Jare Kinir Agasin Kijinkur
Husa Juice Hus Jalamut
Avner
Nare Tnar Tar
Onaxin Agasin Delu
Lihula Halshay Alsui
Shalamun Moon Archa
Hu Actas Was Nux Miss
Do you see it?
Well, no one told me about her.
Okay. Yeah, many of the lines are from the Baroness's own written poetry. We'll continue just a little bit, one more statement. I'm glad you like the film. I think this is what I'm saying, creating a film, not about her history, but creating a fiction to stimulate someone in the age of Google to check her out. You can find out for yourself what you think. So finally, another film that was Derrida. Anyone see that film, Derrida? 2003. This is, the producer asked him this question, have you read all the books in here? He said, no, only 4 of them. But I read those very, very carefully. And a lot of people, which were about 3 people, it's a documentary film about Derrida, so there was not that many people, laughed. And I was irritated. You know, I was lucky and honored to meet Jackie, as we call them, in Stanford in my youth, and kept up with it. I designed a T-shirt for him. So I'm just like, you know, name dropping, deconstructing my history, right? And but when I saw this, I was like, that's not true. What is he saying? But sometimes in object making, it occurs to you in a dream. I had a dream. And I was in this boat, and it was like rocking and rolling, and it was in a ocean, and I saw this nautical compass, and then I looked at it, and the edges, all the directions turned into books. They turned into books. And the pages started to boil and roil into each other. And then I knew I had the answer, you see. It's like a compass because of the way he constructed his thoughts and his investigations that made it impossible. It's always in motion. It's a kinetic understanding of the world and how these juxtapositions between his Marx or the Bible and all these things, David, Goliath, or whatever, it's like all swimming around and creating these things that once you get your bearing straight, you need another direction. So it's always 4 books to establish something that is always in motion. So the piece was called Circumfessional Hymenal C for Jackie D. They didn't want to give him a doctorate at the King's College Cathedral, so this is a labyrinthian ivory tower. But at the top side of it is the ocean, or the emotion of the words boiling into each other. And why I show this at the end, and why I'm glad I hope some of you like the film, is making art also is about debt. What you owe people. Just like I owe Benita, I owe you, I owe everybody who has appreciated my work or may appreciate the work. I owe the artists before me, the artists in this collection and things, for what they've given me. I always will owe them. And my work is about confirming that debt. Because Derrida himself spoke, once Judith Butler talked about him in a passage at his death, where he was going to talk, and he was going to talk about death, and he said debt. And she said, no, Jackie, it's death, and then there's debt. He said it again, and he said it in reverse. He kept saying the same things. Later in the end of his life, he wrote on mourning and this reflection about this extreme debt and how your life is lived to offer that repayment. And the act of making things with earnest and a real kind of scholarship and effort is about that. So I offer this film and these things, my debt to the Baroness, my debt to Duchamp, my debt to all the people who have come before me, and friends and family, and those who are willing to partake in this exploration of the meaning of what we do. You see what I'm saying? So I thank you for coming out this Saturday afternoon. And if y'all have, it's gone on so late, I don't know, if y'all had a couple of questions, I could clarify things. If I glossed over anything, I'm here for you, okay? Okay. Thank you. Okay. So, yeah. And y'all can wake up now. Yeah. Any questions?
I'm going to ask you, no, I'll ask.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much for the lecture. I'm curious, your work deals with such serious subject matter, and yet you come across as this very funny and light person. How do you reconcile this? I'm just curious.
The lessons, maybe it's just today,
And yesterday.
But, the lessons come from the masters like Richard Pryor, let's say comedians that have to talk about the most horrible things in our lives, our division, our racism, and all these things, and they have to do it with humor. And the avenue is to find one comfortable way to describe it. Maybe when I'm lecturing, I take on that persona so I can live with it, because they are deeply affecting our lives forever, you see. So that's just one approach, okay?
Do you believe your upbringing in Houston had an effect on that?
I think it did. I think the upbringing, Texas is a hard to hell of a place if you're a person of color. And growing up, I grew up in 2 parts of Houston. It was in the 5th Ward, the Nickel, and that was the neighborhood. And that's where I learned about life and communication. that's what inspired me. I'm back in the Fifth Ward. I have a 501c3 called Source Studio, and we're working on projects in the Fifth Ward with the community there. And I'm trying my best to create works with them to earn the trust first so we can move forward. So it's a way of living. You know, I felt like the people that have gone through, the communities have gone to the most, what they call unaddressed communities, who have gone through most of the traumas of not only having systemic kind of conditions of law and prejudice against them, as well as the poverty and the hunger that accompanies that, the lead poisoning, because I've studied that. They are the most resilient and most creative, you know? I don't have to go far, and I can learn something. So in my age now, I'm trying to become an artist again with people. So that's one of the things. So yes, it did affect me deeply, because I go back to Houston now. You can't go home again. I live in a wannabe witness protection program in the mountains. You know, try to find me. You can't. But when I go back home, that's one of my homes. You know, so it's true. Thank you for asking, because I'll be back there real soon again. You know.
I'm from Chicago, so I get it.
Oh.
I'm from the south side of Chicago.
I was just in Sweetwater Foundation. I just did an installation there with, we just finished that. It was an exhibition with the MacArthur people. It's the 40 years of MacArthur. So I decided to say, I'll work with Emmanuel Pratt there in the south side of Sweetwater. I created the safe house door, recreated one that's permanent.
You did that?
Yeah, that safe house door at the Civic Arts Church.
Okay, I haven't been there yet. I'm going back home soon. I haven't been.
Oh, cool. Well, if you see Emmanuel, give him a holler.
I will.
He ignores me all the time, so maybe, because he's a genius, you know, and he is a genius. He's fantastic. So great. Thank you for asking. And I really, that's where I gravitated to when I was there for that project. Yeah. So cool. Thank you. All right. Any other questions or comments? Oh, yeah. Mrs. Beek. Okay. Uh-oh. I'm worried now.
Good morning. I'm sorry to miss the early part of your talk, but what I did catch was really very, very interesting and enjoyable. Thank you.
Okay.
I am older guy, who found art only 10 years ago after a very long, successful career in software. What I am finding, however, in my new endeavor, I enjoy making sculpture, and I try to integrate video with that, is I don't know how to bring it to the world. Are there organizations or something that you would suggest to me are ways to look to find ways to connect?
I was going to ask you the same question. No, I think the idea, if you're new to art or you're old to art, whatever, it's about finding oneself. I think saving that intense critique and motivations to deliver oneself to a place that you can feel momentarily comfortable. I think that's the first step. I still is my first step, because it has to pass that. You know, they say the unexamined life is not worth living, but we live in a world that's mediated so much that even the tools to find yourself and to critique yourself cannot always be there. And I would say that why I make things and why I go after things is to create those tools primarily for that self-discovery again. So I can just keep living, man, you know? So good luck. We're in it together. If you're making stuff, we're peers, okay? So the other stuff, I don't know, you know? Miss Meek. Thank you.
You didn't show it, but I'd like for you to talk a little bit about the Fundred project, because I was very affected by that.
All right. Are y'all, look up fundred.org. We're near the end. 500,000 Fundreds have been drawn from across the country. It was motivated when I arrived in New Orleans after the flood, after the storm, and was trying to help. I was so moved by the condition there, I couldn't even come up with anything. But I kept going back to research what was going down, and I found that there was lead poisoning of 30 to 50% of the inner city childhood population before the storm. And nothing was being done about it. By the way, I've spent a reasonable amount of time here in Dallas, in West Dallas, where there was a foundry and lead, and the ramifications of what it has done to the community here in Dallas is also here. That's why the project bridged out nationally. And all it is, everybody likes the Benjamin, right? And it's an empty template for you to draw your own Benjamin. We're still accepting them. If you go to fundra.org, you can download the template and you can draw it and get it to me. Because on April 2nd, we have donated the entire collection called the Funded Reserve to the Brooklyn Museum. If you're not in the museum collection, you can be now. Because we had an armored truck that went 20,000 miles to pick up every drawing we could, one per person. Because I found the kids that were being poisoned were not being represented, nor the grandmothers that are taking care of those kids not being represented, And so since then, we've met with Pelosi, Orrin Hatch, we've met with the congressman, we've met with the congressman here, with no Cruz, but we have met with legislators, but we don't. We bring the families that are from those funded artists to their senator or their congressman to appeal to their greater sense of duty to represent people. And we're talking to, if you're in Illinois, we've been in conversation with Durbin's office. And Durbin has a bill, a childhood, it's called the Lead Safe Housing Act for Kids, that we are hoping to help with our voice, of the people's voice of America, to help propel. So this is another extension of action toward activism and then applying it in a way. So it started with this idea of even exchange, but it moved into there's a greater value in representing voice. Our event in Brooklyn, April 2nd, is called Viva. Not Las Vegas, but Viva. It means value, individual, voice, and action. And that will be in Brooklyn, and we'll make the final presentation, and they'll take the drawings, the final drawings that will come from Texas, Grand Rapids, Chicago, Madison, Wisconsin, the last ones, and we'll give them to them, and they're going to put them within the permanent collection. There's no age discrimination, by the way. If you have kids or family, you're available to do it. I'll try to make sure, I don't know how to do this, but we'll try to get some templates over at UT, right? And we'll make sure you can grab one, draw one before it's over, and we'll get them in there. Okay? Thank you, Vicki. So, yeah. Just either one of these gentlemen. Yeah.
Thanks.
If y'all hang around, I'll ask questions,
I think, in my career, I think the thing that I found that was most changing was my time when I spent at row houses. Right. And it changed my mind about everything, because it was the first time I separated myself and my thoughts and dealt with a community and tried to create the message of the community. Right. And it's made such a difference in my life and the way I look at things. Wow. It's an invaluable lesson, and it's an incredible opportunity. And, I was fortunate to be able to be called back 3 times to do it.
Wow, that's coolio. Yeah. When Katrina happened, I just went over to Rick. I flew in. I said, we were in the street, I said, Rick Lowe's, the founder of us. I said, you going? And he said, yep. I said, well, we're going. So that's when we went to New Orleans. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I actually didn't have a question until you started talking about Houston.
Uh-oh.
Your presentation was more Duchamp and Derrida, but Houston really got my attention because you're in the neighborhood of Texas Southern University, where there's an art program with a great history. And
he's in a different one. They're in Third Ward. He's in the fifth.
Okay. And there's an artist there who was there in the Golden Age, you're old enough to have met him, named John Biggers. Now, is there any way that you stand on Biggers' shoulders or feel his strength in what you're doing?
Absolutely. That's what the idea of debt is about. It's not just Biggers. It's every artist that has made a statement, a testament, in a relationship that I'm working with. Their ideas. What I'm talking about is it's about the struggle to make ideas survive in a very contentious climate. That's what we're talking about. Yeah, it's not isolating individuals. You know, it's not about this is better. It's not that the Baroness was totally forgotten. You know, so all I'm trying to make is a catalytic film so that someone say, well, who the hell is that? And discover, because if you're asked a question about knowing, you create the conditions for someone to discover the information on their own and they own it. I can't tell you to go look her up because you may not want to. But I do think that my obligation in this particular historical sense was to share a process to allow ownership to occur. You see what I'm saying? So it's creating climates, and they talk about climate change. You know, I think societal justice and climate change go hand in hand. And that's why I say white supremacy is a big obstacle. Because if you deny the basic essential of humanity, you started off, you will never get it. You see? So that's what my goal is, just to make sure that I continue this individual personal critique so I can create actions that can be reflective of that investigation. And if they can be shared to an object or to an action, I will do that, you know? So it's about rigor. So yes, it's not an individual artist, because we can just go down the line and I'll be not standing on their shoulder. I'll be taking a knee, you know, to their power. But I don't represent that. I don't believe in power, for one thing, in terms of art. The power of art, no. Because power is that ultimately corruptible situation. So I believe in options, you see, to have choices. In a world that doesn't really give you much, really. A bunch of fake ones, you know. So, okay. So I'm sorry here, I'm getting preachy. I knew that would happen, and it's Saturday. All right. All right. Let's stop that now. All right. Be calm. Stay calm. All right. Well, I appreciate y'all very much. And y'all come back again. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Tony. Tony and team.
Thank you.
All right.